You're
tuned into the Awesemo NBA Strategy Show.
And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, January 11th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by YAHOO Fantasy Sports. And today, we've got a 6-game NBA slate to attack. Some of this is pretty ugly. Some of it is pretty tough to break down. It is not the same sort of slate that we've had in the recent past where we have value abundantly scattered throughout the league. It does not appear that today is going to be that kind of day. We have a day where Nikola Jokic is projected for like 20 more fantasy points than the next closest guy. It's going to be a wild one. Hit that like button to start it all off. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how did it go for you on Monday?
It went pretty poorly. I avoided most of the chalk that did poorly, but then I played other guys that did really poorly. I did have a lot of Nurkic, which didn't help. So
no,
didn't really go that well.
No, did not go that well for me either. Not nearly enough Whiteside, and he made it so that you needed him by halftime. So
yeah, no, I had plenty of him, just didn't have the other pieces.
Yeah, I hear you. It was just a weird day altogether, but we've got 6 games. It took us slightly longer than we would have expected yesterday to get through 7. So we'll see what we're going to get out of this one. Checking quickly to see if ownership is updated, and it is. So we do have ownership as of 1 minute ago. Adam, if you want to go ahead and grab that, I am doing that now. You'll see right away when you click on the link, 28% is the highest owned on DraftKings on a 6-game slate. That's pretty flat. 39% on FanDuel, and that one's not all that surprising to me. If it holds through the day, this seems like a difficult slate, and I'm happy about it because I feel like just jamming blind chalk over the past 2 weeks has become a little bit less fun.
Yeah, I enjoy. I mean, so I guess it's kind of like different levels of enjoyment. I enjoy playing slates like this because I think there's more strategy and it's more interesting, like the lineups that you build. I enjoy the other slates because, I mean, it's still fun to play high-scoring slates. Like, you're not going to win, but it still feels good to just watch your lineup score a million points.
Absolutely. David Porter says, I saw Josh up there near the top on DK for a minute. Yeah, that was a brief minute at like, I don't know, whatever time I sent you that screenshot, like 8:30.
Kevin Porter Jr.
Then Kevin Porter missed 3 straight threes that I was watching and got himself ejected, and that lineup went by the wayside pretty promptly. And fully deserved to get ejected. I think when he fouled Charlie Brown that he whispered in his ear, I was just trying to get the hell off this floor. So that's it worked out perfectly for him. I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yep.
Well, it's terrible to start. The Oklahoma City Thunder, 9-point dogs in Washington, 216 total. And lucky for us, unlucky for us, I'm not really sure which type of verbiage I'm supposed to use when it comes to talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they're basically healthy, and that's usually not a good thing for OKC. Lou Dort, not on the injury report. No Kenrich Williams, no Isaiah Roby. Not like those guys are guys you get to a lot anyway. SGA is about 25% owned across both sites. Seems about right. Josh Giddey is 20 on DraftKings, 30 on FanDuel. Seems about right. Lou Dort is pulling a little bit of ownership, call it like 15 across both sites. Darius Baisley is 15 on DK at 3,800. We can dig into that. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is 13 on DK at 3,700. I guess let's start with the main 3, SGA, Giddey, Dort. Where are you landing? I think they all look pretty similar to each other, but I'd happily get to SGA at 7,600.
Yeah, I think so as well. Their prices did all drop on DraftKings. So SGA, since he returned, it's kind of been like, oh, well, he's 8,800, so you can't prioritize him, but he still has a high ceiling. At 7,600, he starts to look better. You're likely to get 34 minutes or so. He only played 31 and a half last game, but we had weird rotations there where the second unit did well in the first half, and so they stayed out a little bit longer than usual. I think it's safe to expect around 34 minutes or so from SGA. Giddey should play around 32 minutes. Dort should probably play around 34. So they all look pretty good at their respective salaries. I think SGA looks the best, though. He's just, the best fantasy point per minute guy out of that group. He's not as good from a fantasy standpoint this year as he was last year, since Giddey cuts in his assist opportunities, but still a really fair price tag for him.
All right. Yeah, for SGA and Giddey and Dort, it's kind of easy. It's like these are the guys that are good, especially SGA and Giddey. Like they're, more than a fantasy point per minute guys. They're going to play well north of 30 minutes as long as the game's competitive. These are the guys that we're interested in. What do we do with the rest of this Oklahoma City team? On FanDuel, they're really difficult to play. They're not getting the same sort of ownership, but we're seeing Darius Baisley at 3,800 get a little bit of love as value. $3,700 Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Do you feel the same way about those value options?
I mean, I think they both make sense as long as we don't get better value opening up throughout the day. They kind of just seem like placeholder value right now, where you're expecting 24-ish minutes for Jeremiah Robinson Earl. You're expecting around 24 minutes for Baisley. Robinson Earl for the season is at 0.78 DraftKings points per minute. Baisley's at 0.84. So they're both just sort of guys that if they play 24, 25 minutes, they're going to project for, low 20s fantasy points at sub 4K, which is fine, but pretty easy to beat once we start getting guys ruled out.
Is there anybody else here that you think could be or should be pulling a little bit of love? Aaron Wiggins, Trey Mann, Poku? I don't know.
Not really. I mean, the only guy out is Kenrich Williams. I'm not really sure what impact that's going to have, but it's tough. Like, I think it's most likely you just see somebody else get into the rotation because, like, he was already playing all of his minutes alongside Baisley and Mann and Wiggins and Poku. So, like, they can't just play more. You have to do something different. So I don't really know what effect he's going to have. I don't know that it really opens anything up.
Oh, God, this Oklahoma City team is just a real chore. I want to get SGA out of there. Actually, I want to get Dort out of there.
If other value doesn't open up and Robinson, Earl, Baisley are pulling a lot of ownership, those are for sure the kind of guys that I just don't mind getting to and finding a way around.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oof. Who is your favorite OKC guy? Is it Shea?
Yes.
Okay. It just kind of feels like it has to be. Nothing better than seeing Josh Giddey be a shooting guard on FanDuel and a small forward on DraftKings. Neither site giving him his technical correct position.
Point guard?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They just make this stuff up. They really do. Alrighty. I don't have anything else really for Oklahoma City. Just focus on the minutes and focus on the guys that play the most and maybe squeeze some value out of the rest of the garbage that exists. Ugh, shut this team down. And then we go to Washington, who might be the easiest team on this entire slate to talk about. Your Washington Wizards are wildly uninteresting, and they get more uninteresting as the days go by. Montrezl Harrell is back and in. Thomas Bryant is out. Anthony Gill is out. Rui Hachimura made his return this last time out, which is a very interesting talking point. We saw Aaron Holiday not be a part of the rotation, which is something we're going to have to see. Like Davis Bertans came back, played 10 minutes. I don't know if Corey Kispert's long for this rotation, depending on when people start coming back. We lose out on the fun 32-plus minute Gafford games, I would imagine. So we've got Montrezl Harrell as the highest owned guy on FanDuel right now at 19%. We've got him at 11% on DK, where he's second to just 6K Spencer Dinwiddie. Beal getting a little bit of love on FanDuel. Where are your priorities for Washington? Is it like the public? Is it Montrezl Harrell?
I mean, it's probably Harrell before anyone else. I'm not super confident in him, but we do know that, for most of the season, it's been a 48-minute split between him and Gafford. If he comes back and plays like 24, 25 minutes at 4,700, he's going to look pretty good. One minor concern that I have is, do they continue going 48 minutes for those two? Because Kuzma as the backup center has been pretty good for this team. And, you've seen some massive games from Kuzma. So I don't know. Do they start working that in? Like, do you get 22 minutes from Gafford? What?
And Rui is back.
Well, right. Do you get 22 from Gafford, 22 from Harrell, and then Kuzma closes, and they give more minutes, they throw Avdia in there along with Beal, Dinwiddie, and KCP, or they throw Rui in there, or they throw Bertans in there, do they start just playing with more of those lineups? I think that's a real risk. But
especially against Toronto too.
Right. Yeah. Toronto has virtually no bigs. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do. I do think that, at 4,700, if Harrell just goes back to his normal rotation, he would look like a decent option. And then Dinwiddie at 6K, I think is reasonable. He played 31 minutes last game. He had gotten, I think, 31 minutes the game before and actually lost a few minutes to garbage time as well. So maybe he starts trending up a little bit. But we also know that his production takes a pretty sizable hit when Beal's playing.
So what's your expectation on this Gafford-Harrell split that you're going to go with now? I went 26-22, 24-24 works. I think that less than 48 is also on the table as you outlined it. But like, what's your expectation for how you're going to start?
I'll probably go like 22-22.
Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, it makes sense.
I just don't, because like Avdia is still in the rotation. I expect Neto to still be in the rotation. I still expect Beal, Kuzma to play a lot of minutes. I expect KCP to play around 30 minutes. I expect Rui and Bertans to be in the rotation. Unless you're starting to throw Bertans minutes at the 3, I don't really know that you're getting 48 from the centers.
Yeah, it seems natural that they don't have to do that any longer. I mean, what seems most natural is trying to find a landing spot for Montrezl Harrell at the deadline. Like, right. He's just not all that helpful right now. And if anybody needs a bench big for some scoring, you know, anybody that's had like an injury or something, because they're especially, I mean, Thomas Bryant's going to be back soon. That's another guy that like they would rather probably give minutes than Montrezl Harrell. So you got to assume that Harrell is going to be on his way out for Washington. I just wonder if that's an impact for today. Like, are you bringing him back slowly but surely, advertising him for the future, make sure they know he can run, and then get him the hell out of here? Because trade deadline's coming up in a month.
Right.
Do you have any other priorities here, though? Like, do you expect to get a lot of volume from Washington? Because I didn't get it. I got to Dinwiddie and I got to Harrell the same way that the public did. I didn't get to anybody else, and I didn't get to anyone on FanDuel either.
No, I don't really see anything that stands out outside of just taking some shots at Harrell and Dinwiddie.
Man, you would just expect something to be better, but just because of the way that people were out and the way that prices changed, like, how do you even advocate for an $8,400 Kyle Kuzma in this moment, or an $8,800 on FanDuel Kyle Kuzma? Like, he's been better like, for sure, but he's still even at his best, he's like a 1.1 guy.
Right, and it's hard to count on those rebounds when you bring Harrell back too. I mean, even like when you look at the last game, Gafford played 27 minutes. The game where Kuzma had, I think, like 20-something rebounds. Gafford played 27 minutes. Almost every minute that Gafford wasn't on the floor, Kuzma was out there. I mean, they closed the first half with a lineup of Dinwiddie, Neto, Beal, KCP, Kuzma. Like, if you're getting those kind of lineups, I'm willing to pay $8,400 for Kuzma. But you can't expect that lineup to be on the floor that often with Harrell back too.
This first 7:00 game is going to be pretty easy to not have a lot of. It's not fun. It's a garbage way to start the slate. I don't have anything else for OKC or Washington.
Me neither.
All right. Well, we put that one to bed. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. So we've got the NFL strategy show coming up after this at 11 a.m. We've got the PGA strategy show coming up at 1 p.m., NHL strategy at 2, Yahoo specific NBA show at 3, a No House Advantage NBA show at 3:30, and then it's back to normal. 5 p.m. deeper dive, 6 p.m. live before lock. We've got free NBA player rankings, free PGA top golfers, and free NHL player projections. The Wizards potentially making the playoffs has nothing to do with them trading Montrezl Harrell.
Well, it shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a very, 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 very terrible thought process that I don't think that they're going to be all that worried about. He provides them, for all intents and purposes, no value. Given the amount of different people that can play the 5 at this point. I don't think that you need to make
he's
sure
been good with the second unit for sure. But you're getting Rui back is the thing.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're getting out of him. You're getting a terrible defensive center that is good offensively. That's a really good second unit center that provides very, very little value to your team when you have 5 other guys that can play that role. I'm really anxious to see Thomas Bryant come back too. I mean, I kind of like him.
So do I.
Probably doesn't matter at all, but.
And I mean, I really like Gafford.
Yeah, same. Yeah, there's just like in 271 minutes last year for Thomas Bryant, he had a 73% true shooting. In 2020 and 1,200 minutes, 66% true shooting. Like, he could also be ultra efficient offensively in the same way that Montrezl Harrell can.
And he spaces the floor better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Harrell to the Bulls is not really what you're looking for. You already have, like, I don't, they're not going to be looking to take on Harrell for the 14 minutes that Vooch doesn't play. I don't know. Where would he go? Now, this is probably why we end up running long, because I tried thinking of Montrezl Harrell trade destinations that end up being completely and utterly meaningless. I don't have one off the top of my head right now.
I don't mind the Bucks one that people are mentioning. Just give him those 20 minutes behind Portis, and then in the playoffs, he doesn't step on the floor.
That would get expensive. Not going to Atlanta, not going to Boston, not going to Brooklyn. Chicago, sure. I mean, Charlotte could have had him and didn't. Certainly not going to Cleveland. I mean, Dallas would be interesting if you wanted to try to like make Dwight Powell be better. But I don't really think that solves anything unless you want to just try to bludgeon teams. Clearly not Denver, Detroit, Golden State, Houston, Pacers, no. Clippers, no. Lakers. I'm sure the Lakers need another center. Harrell can go back there. I mean, there aren't really like a lot of natural landing spots, which ends up being a little bit complicating. I don't really see an actual team that he truly fits on, a team that needs a center or needs that sort of scoring punch from the five. Milwaukee's a decent shout, but he would also then get played clean off the floor and never play in the playoffs. So, like,
yeah, plus Lopez comes back eventually.
Yeah. Milwaukee, none of these teams that are actually contending are trying to make deals for guys that cannot play in the playoffs. And right. Montrezl Harrell cannot play in the playoffs. All right, let's keep it moving here. Phoenix Suns, 4-point favorites in Toronto. And before I even ask you anything here, have you heard anything about Phoenix Suns travel plans? Do they hold anybody out of Toronto today?
I haven't heard.
Yeah. It's something to pay attention to. If you told me that they didn't send Chris Paul, I would not be surprised by something like that. This is a very real thing that if you pop for COVID while you're in Canada, you get to hang out in Canada for a hot minute. So
it's weird though. Like, I mean, shouldn't they either be not sending any of their main guys or sending all of them? Like, are you just gonna like, is it really any? They don't want Booker stuck there either. They don't want Ayton stuck there.
Sure, but like, you don't want them both stuck. You know what I mean? And like, if you can give Chris Paul rest for being old, then like Paul becomes the guy, and you take your chances. You don't want to lose it all at the same time. You're willing to like mix and match. Wouldn't be surprised if we see someone get ruled out for Phoenix just because that border is treacherous. Build the wall, I say. Let's look at Phoenix, though. We've got Jay Crowder back, 20% owned on FanDuel at 4,100, 17% owned on DraftKings at 3,900. No Cam Johnson in this one, by the way, just in case you're curious. He is out for, I think, the next couple of games. Ankle injury, if I'm correct. I'm usually correct. Cam Johnson, ankle injury. Yes. Landry Shamet is back. Still no Frank Kaminsky, Nader, Ish Wainwright, or Justin Jackson, who I actually gave minutes to and need to take them away from, but doesn't matter. It's Justin Jackson. Let's start with the Crowder value. I think he looks great today, knowing that Cam Johnson's out.
Yeah, I think he looks pretty good as well. It's still Jay Crowder, so keep your expectations in check. But he's only 3,900. It's likely that he picks up a couple more minutes with Johnson out. I think I'd rather get to him than $3,700 Robinson Earl or Baisley in 24 minutes. Absolutely.
I feel the same way there for Crowder. The only other guy that's pulling a ton of ownership here would be $7,200 DeAndre Ayton at 20% ownership. That number feels a little high to me. I like it. I clearly like Ayton and would happily get to him. 20%, 1 out of every 5 lineups. Am I missing something here? Are you expecting more minutes? I gave him 32.
I think 32 is fair. I mean, that's around what he's averaged for the year. He played 32 against Miami and subbed out with like 5 minutes to go in the game. But I don't think you can really count on that. I mean, I think it's a pretty good spot against a smaller Toronto front court. Like, I think that he should be good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the ownership makes sense. Like, I think 7,200 is a good price.
Okay. I think I would have just a little bit more interest trying to get to even like Chris Paul at 7,700 instead of just center eligible Ayton, because we have one center that we definitely need to talk about. But Booker, 15-ish%, 12 to 15% owned. Paul, same. No real ownership going to Bridges here. Campaign is at 13% owned on DraftKings, which, in case you haven't noticed, like, the way that we're talking about Baisley, Robinson, Earl, Crowder, Campaign, there is not a lot of value like we've normally had on these slates. Like we're grabbing the bench guy that plays 24 minutes type stuff right now. So what else stands out to you from Phoenix?
Yeah, and I mean Payne, he's a really good per minute guy. They don't play him that much alongside Paul, so it makes it tough to count on him. But with the lack of value on the slate right now, I get why the ownership is there. The one thing that I would mention, because obviously Paul and Booker are both good plays whenever you can get to them. The one thing I would mention is the 5% on Bridges is pretty interesting to me. He's someone that I think could play more with Johnson out. Yeah. Like I don't think that when you think about who's going to pick up those minutes, like we think Crowder plays a little bit more. You have Shamet back, so he probably plays mid-20s. But there's still a little bit of playing time left, and I think it's likely that you get Bridges playing a lot of minutes again. We've kind of seen whenever somebody goes down, Bridges plays more minutes because he can play multiple positions. I wouldn't be surprised if you get a few more minutes out of Bridges.
Okay. I'm assuming McGee goes back to being the backup center. Maybe we see like Jalen Smith at the 4 in this one, just because it's Toronto and he's long, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he played a little bit alongside McGee last game too.
Okay. Yeah, to me, Phoenix just looks like pretty similar across the board. The extremes of ownership, I'll probably be a little lighter, other than Crowder, who I think his minutes and price tag just make it pretty easy to want to get to him. But I rotate through Booker and Paul for sure, assuming they both get to play. Then we go to Toronto, which, as per usual, could be easy. Gary Trent, however, questionable left ankle injury. Scotty Barnes, questionable right knee injury. Yuta Watanabe is off of the injury report. But assuming everybody is in, we know what we do with this team. 5 of these guys play 34 minutes or more, and you don't have to worry about their bench guys, generally speaking. We have OG Anunoby as the highest owned guy across both sites. He's about 20% owned. Scotty Barnes is 30% owned on FanDuel, where he's only 5,600 right now. If Barnes is in, I love Barnes on FanDuel. Siakam and Van Vliet are about 10% owned, and that makes some sense at their salary spots. Gary Trent not pulling all that much ownership with his Q tag either. I'm interested in Gary Trent even just before the Q tag. Rank the Toronto guys, I guess.
They all kind of look the same to me. I think that Trent at 5,300, assuming the ownership doesn't get crazy if he's ruled in, looks pretty good just because, again, there's not a ton of value on this slate. Yeah. Getting from somebody like, $3,900 or 30 whatever for Baisley, just, kind of finding $1,000 or $1,400 to get to a guy that's going to play 34 minutes instead is pretty appealing, as long as you don't have to sacrifice too much at the top end of your lineup. Van Vliet, when all these guys look pretty similar, in terms of value, Van Vliet's the one that I really like going to, especially when he's not pulling that much ownership. He has the ball in his hands a ton, and he's just so capable of taking over games. When his shot's falling, it just becomes Fred Van Vliet chucking shots every time down the floor. I think he just has a little bit more volatility in his game than the rest of these guys.
I don't know what to do with him right now because I don't think that he looks particularly good. I actually have him ranked out as my least favorite Raptor. Now, I don't mean that in any sort of extreme way. I would never get to Fred Van Vliet, but he does rank last for me. And it's because I think that I project him like normal Fred Van Vliet. And he's been at 1.43 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. I've got him at 1.15. Which, I don't feel bad about. It's a matchup against Phoenix. It's not the best spot in the world. And I don't think that he's going to continue to be a 1.43 guy because that's one of the best players in basketball. And I'm having trouble, reconciling him. So I ran my sim. I have him in 7% of lineups right now. I'm basically neutral with the field. I just don't know what to do with a $9,600 Van Vliet. And at the same time, every single game, he just goes out there and absolutely smashes. And I feel like I can't avoid him either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but I feel like he's just one of the most volatile players in terms of the gap between what he can do and what his average production is. I mean, I mean, it's insane. The other night was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. He scored, I not even exaggerating, I think he scored 30 fantasy points in 4 minutes. It was absolutely insane. What he did, I think it was 2 games ago. So, I mean, it's just. We've seen this in the past from him too. Even when Lowry was here, anybody who rostered Kyle Lowry a lot, it was very aware of this happening because you'd be watching the game thinking that you have the ball handler on Toronto, and then suddenly it's Fred Van Vliet just driving down the floor, dribbling in circles, kind of turning into a good version of Jordan Clarkson, and just making like every shot that he takes. So he's one of those guys that when his shot's falling, he's just not afraid to basically say, okay, well, we're playing 1-on-5 now, and I'm going to win. And it's really good for his fantasy upside.
Coming off of that stretch where either he was out or like the Raptors missed some time too. So he came back on December 31st, 57, 54, 54, 38, 76, and 50 fantasy points. Obviously, 50 is sort of the threshold where you're like, all right, that worked for today. Happy that we got it. But 9,600 is a big price tag. We'll talk it through. We've got a couple of other options in that range for today. I prefer Anunoby, Barnes, and Trent. Let's say that one of Trent or Barnes is out and we free up that extra 30-something minutes. Do you see someone that immediately stands out to you?
Not really.
If it's Trent, is Svi like the thing at 3,700 at that point?
I think it's Birch. Well, I think Birch starts. Like that's what we saw last game was Birch just slide into the starting lineup. Right. Birch played 21 minutes. Boucher played 28 off the bench. Achua played 27. Svi got into the rotation and played 14. But I think they really like this 6-8 thing that they're doing, and that they're just going to kind of find more minutes for those guys primarily. So like if one of those guys is out, I think that taking some shots on, it sucks because they're both centers, Achua and Birch, but maybe taking shots at Boucher, Achua, Birch would make some sense. Not to mention Phoenix does have Ayton, so it would kind of make sense anyway to just kind of go more Birch, Achua for Toronto.
God, that's even worse. That's even worse. If Barnes and Trent happen to be out in this one,
then I think Svi's the next guy up.
Okay.
Or maybe they just start Siakam at the 3 and they start Boucher and Birch. I have no idea. But I think Svi's the next one up.
Okay. Good to know. Anything else here for Toronto other than basically if everybody's in, play the starters?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty cut and dry. Assuming everybody is in, you don't have interest in Achua, Birch, or Boucher, correct?
No, not if everybody's in. If they're out, they start to become interesting tournament plays.
Yeah. Boucher is 5,200. If everybody's in, it's going to be a really tough sell. You can talk me into Precious at 3,800, even if everybody is in, just because that's how little value we have, but that is bleak at best.
If you get the same rotations as last game, you would be getting 28 minutes from Boucher.
Right.
Which is where I think, that's why it would still be worth a dart throw. There's no guarantee he gets that. That could easily become, Birch or Svi or something. But,
is the rotation different for Achua? He had 27 minutes last time.
What was your question?
It was Achua's rotation weird or anything? Could we expect that 27 again? Because 27 of Achua at 3,800 would be probably the most interesting piece of Toronto. He
split 48 with Birch, and Birch was in foul trouble.
Okay.
Birch lost 2 minutes and 30 seconds at the end of the first half with his third foul. He picked up his fourth 2.5 minutes into the third quarter, so Achua came in there. I think it's likely that you would get a 24-24 split or even a 26-20. So before the fouls, it looked like Birch was going to play about 12 minutes or so in the first half. So I think a 24-24 split would be reasonable. And then Boucher was playing alongside them. Boucher's rotation was, I think you could get 28 minutes from Boucher again.
Okay. Assuming Trent is out.
Yeah, assuming Trent's out. Or
got it.
Barnes is out.
All right, let's keep this one moving then. We're going to Golden State, who might actually be the worst team to look at for today. Golden State Warriors are 1-point favorites in Memphis. This could have been a really, really, really fun game if Draymond were healthy, but unfortunately Draymond is out. We have no questionable tags on Otto Porter and Gary Payton. The Cumbucket and Moses Moody are both in the G League. Highest owned guy in this game at this moment is $3,800 Andre Iguodala at 16%. We've got Wiggins and Looney and Juan Toscano-Anderson all around 10%, and no real ownership coming into Steph at this point. Is Andre Iguodala at 3,800 the best play on the Warriors today? I think it's Wiggins, but
I don't really like any of them.
I know, it's bad, right? How is this team so impossible to roster?
Because Steph Curry is always really expensive and he takes everyone else's stats.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's probably it. Talk to me about Steph. Is he just like a guy today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the ceiling is there, but and the salaries come down a little bit. But I mean, like you said, you have Jokic that you would probably like to pay up for. There's not a ton of value on the slate, so it's kind of tough to get up to that price range anyway. If you get to him in tournaments, I think it's fine, but he doesn't really stand out.
Ooh, it's weird. Any thoughts on Wiggins? How do you feel about Iggy? Is there a different piece of value you'd like to get to? Flat minimum Juan Toscano Anderson is there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to some Iggy at 3,800, I think it's fine in the same way that those OKC guys were fine. Not excited about it. Toscano Anderson's center only on DraftKings,
which is preposterous, but whatever. It feels like the type of game where you want to take some shots. Like, this is the closest game. It's Golden State on the road in Memphis. Memphis is coming to Memphis gets up for these Golden State games. We saw it last year during the play-in tournament? Yeah, it was. I want to get to pieces here. I got to 22% Wiggins at 6,400, which to me is just like another guy that's playing 34 minutes at a mid-range price. I didn't get anything more than 2% of anybody else in this team, Curry or Looney. I didn't really get to much Iggy. I got him projected for 18 fantasy points. Yeah,
I mean, I don't mind Looney. Like, he should probably play 28 minutes or so, but he's also center only at 4,800.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't have anything else to add for Golden State. I think we could push forward. We go to Memphis. Memphis is a little bit different. Now, I thought they were going to pop a little bit more, given the fact that Dillon Brooks is out. We do have Steven Adams questionable from the health and safety protocols. I personally want him to not play today, just to try to free up some additional playing time for the Brandon Clarks and the Jaren Jacksons, and just to get a little bit more value on this slate. Right now, we've got Jaren Jackson 13% owned on FanDuel. We've got Desmond Bane 17% owned on DraftKings at 6,500. We've got Ja at 13% at 8,900. $6,500 Bane is the guy that I like the most here, but he and Morant are basically equals to me. And Morant is just so much better when Dillon Brooks isn't on the floor.
Yeah, agreed. And we did get the small starting lineup last game with Adams out. I would expect that here if Adams is out again. But yeah, Bane at 6,500 looks fine. He benefits when Brooks isn't on the floor as well. Like you said, Morant looks better. He's 8,900. Certainly don't mind getting to him. Jackson also benefits if Adams is out. He would actually look pretty good at 7,100.
I have Adams in for right now at 5,300. I don't find him to be all that interesting. That kind of mutes my interest in someone like Kyle Anderson. Jaren Jackson obviously has the ceiling, but that dude is perpetually playing 29 minutes. I think Morant and Bane are going to be the guys that I get to most. And on FanDuel, Morant 9,900, not even all that appealing. I mean, still certainly pretty good, but it doesn't just fly to the top of my rankings the way that he normally would at 8,900. I thought there'd be more here with no Dillon Brooks, and it doesn't exist. The prices are already high. And they're getting bodies back too. John Conchar is back now. Zaire Williams is finally back after being out forever. They're not shorthanded any longer. They're as deep as they've ever been.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that if we assume Adams is in, I think Morant and Bane are the ones I get to first. 5K for Kyle Anderson, assuming he's going to play around 28 minutes, is fine. I'm not excited about it, but value is not that abundant on this slate. And then, Jackson is okay, but like you said, and I've mentioned it before too, the biggest issue I have with Jackson right now is you're taking on all of the volatility that comes with Jaren Jackson from a downside standpoint, but they haven't been running those rotations where when he's not in foul trouble, he's giving you 34 minutes. So it's kind of like your reward for him avoiding foul trouble if you roster him is, oh, cool, I still need Jaren Jackson to play better than usual to pay off his salary.
It's very true. It's very true. Really, really hope that Adams doesn't play. Gene Smith says, whoa, remember that slow-mo blows ass. It's a fantasy point per minute guy.
Yep.
Does not stink. Just because he's not fun to watch doesn't mean he's bad. All right. Time for us. Oh, that just freaked me out. Wrong tab. There was a GIF playing that I wasn't ready for. Yahoo Fantasy Sports is the presenting sponsor of this show. You can get First of all, you should go to awesemo.com/Yahoo-promo. You can see it on the banner at the top of the screen. You can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. To qualify for that, either type in the link that I just described or go to the link in the description of this video. Sign up for an account using the link below, deposit and play. That's all you got to do. Yahoo will then send us your username. We will reach out to you with a promo code for Awesemo. You can also get a free $10 of site credit by clicking that link. You can get into tonight's $75,000 NBA Tuesday Night Baller or this weekend's $500,000 NFL Wildcard Ballers. Either way, you're going to be in a good spot. Make sure you're using the DFS tools and projections that we have designed specifically for Yahoo in order to give you your best chance to win. So thank you very much, Yahoo, for being the presenting sponsor here. 3 to go, Adam. 3 to go. And we will start that off with the Minnesota Timberwolves, 4-point favorites in New Orleans, 227 total. No one from Minnesota more than 9% owned. Again, this is a 6-game slate where we're basically not showing anybody getting any real ownership. We've got D'Angelo Russell where he's 7,600 on FanDuel at 16% owned. No one else in double digits. I'm willing to roster Towns, Edwards, Russell, and Vanderbilt. I don't really think anybody here is a priority. I think I like Edwards the most on DraftKings. I definitely like D'Angelo Russell the most on FanDuel, but they all look kind of blurry to me. Yeah,
it is nice that you're getting a discount, $2,000 discount from Jokic to Towns. If the value on the slate continues to be as difficult to come by, that could actually be useful because even though Towns isn't nearly as good a fantasy option as Jokic, he does still give you that 70-point upside and potentially gives you some really good lineups where you don't have to pay down quite as much at other positions, but still doesn't stand out. Russell and Edwards both look fine as well. If Beverly's back, he's reasonable at 5,300. I always like Vanderbilt, but at 6,200, it starts to get tough to get there. He's nice because he rebounds so well, and you can count on that being there. But the price tag elevating makes it tough.
Is there anything on the bench for Minnesota that we can get to? Patrick Beverly is questionable. I'm assuming that he is back. Somehow, even with Patrick Beverly out, Jalen Noel's minutes went down. I didn't think that was going to be possible. Well, they didn't go down from the previous game, but they didn't go up to anything substantial, which was kind of surprising to me. But I guess they're starting to just fill out. And they didn't go to Malik Beasley either, which was kind of weird. We did see Josh Okogie get 17 minutes. I don't see much on the end of Minnesota. It's really just Vanderbilt, Russell, Edwards, and Towns here. Maybe a little bit of Beverly if he is in. I mean, 6,800 on FanDuel. I wouldn't play a single share of him there, but 5,300 on DraftKings could be okay.
Yeah, I pretty much just am looking at the starters here if Beverly is in. And I guess even if he's out, because if you assume Jaden McDaniels moves into the starting lineup, he's not a very good per minute guy, but he's 3,900 and would probably play around 28 to 30 minutes, so he'd be okay, at least with the value you have available now. But it's tough to get to the bench because they're pretty much just running their starters a lot of minutes, no matter who the starters are.
Weird team. It's weird. Their starting rotation is really good on a per minute basis. They've all been over a fantasy point per minute over the last 30 days. They basically all project that. Beverly is a little shy of it, but I got Vanderbilt at 1. I got Russell at 1-1. I got Edwards over 1. Cat, obviously fantastic. And yet they're still just not popping here. I'm ready to go to New Orleans if you are.
Also, just don't forget to give slight bumps to Russell and Edwards if Beverly is out for their assist numbers.
Yeah.
Particularly Russell, who has a 36.7% assist percentage without Beverly on the floor this year.
Oh, I just turned my camera off. Didn't mean to do that.
I'm sure everyone appreciated it.
Oh, that's not nice. Well, they get the mustache picture, so they probably did. Josh Hart is in. Tomas Satoransky is in. And this might just be the best team that you could roster today in DFS. Josh Hart, 25% owned. Brandon Ingram, 20 to 30% owned, depending on the site. Herbert Jones is in 10% of lineups. Joe Val's in 15% of lineups. Devontae Graham's in 15% of lineups. This is the best looking team of the day to me. And that's not a fun thing to say.
It is not, but pretty favorable pricing. Ingram should give you 35, 36 minutes at 8,200. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy. Makes him look pretty good. Joe Val's salary is slowly coming down. 8,500 for a guy that can score 50 plus is pretty appealing. Josh Hart should play a lot of minutes at 6,300. And then, the Graham Jones pieces are less exciting, but They're also less expensive. They still don't look bad. Graham played 32 minutes last game. I expect that we continue to see that. Alexander Walker is still not playing much off the bench.
He's playing less now too.
Right, yeah. It's weird because like I would like to keep taking shots at that because if he does get back to 24, 25 minutes, he's going to look good at this price, but there's no real indication that they want to do that. So yeah, I mean, Jones is playing a lot of minutes. He's not a great fantasy producer, but he has gotten better as the year's gone on.
You get the power forward center too, which makes it a little bit easier. He shouldn't have center at all. That's dumb, but I would imagine Herbert Jones has basically never played a single minute at center for the Pelicans.
I don't think he has.
I mean, they don't like it's either Joval for 32 plus one of the other idiots, or on the random chance that Joval is out, pretty much just exclusively those other two idiots splitting 48 minutes. So
they played Jackson Hayes alongside Joval last game.
That'll go well. Well, now that Joval is just Dirk Valanciunas just knocking down three after three, maybe you can handle that stretch.
Well, and I mean, they're without
Josh Hart. No Josh Hart.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, yeah. So scratch that.
Hart's my favorite guy in this one at 6,300 on DK. That's just a very easy price to make work. Of all the guys that don't have dual eligibility, somehow it's him who plays like 4 separate positions for the team. But we'll do whatever we can here for Josh Hart. Do you have a favorite Pelican?
I think I agree with you that it's Hart when you factor in the positions. Joval's pretty high on the list too.
Josh just reading numbers. Yeah, that's what this is, oddly enough. Reading numbers. It's the whole point of it all. Thank you. I appreciate you noticed. So much Pelicans today, which, look, I mean, that's what happens when you face Minnesota too. I mean, it's a really good matchup from a DFS perspective, but I didn't expect the Pelicans salaries to be good enough to work here, but they certainly are. Joval at 14% owned on FanDuel at 7,900. Boy, oh boy, is that an interesting number given what we're going to see for Jokic when we get there.
Yeah, and I mean, Joval is just really interesting again because of how little like cheap value there is on the slate. Because if you like, people are going to go to Jokic, and they should for sure. But people are going to go to Jokic, and it's going to force them into similar roster constructions where you have to kind of rotate through the crappy value that we've talked about so far. If you go to somebody like Towns or Joval at cheaper price points, yeah, a lot of times they're going to just get smashed by Jokic because Jokic is better. But it can give you lineups that actually have a little bit more upside because instead of playing those $3,700 Jeremiah Robinson Earl type plays, you can actually get to like the Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes type plays.
Yeah, the lineups where you don't have Jokic, your most expensive guy is probably below 10K. Like, because it's not as if Curry and Towns are like flying off the page. You're probably able to build a relatively balanced lineup, at least as of this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it kind of changes by the time lock comes around, but it's pretty interesting. Like on slates like this in general, obviously I always want to get to Jokic, but Jokic is the Jokic pieces are more appealing when they're not getting the ownership because it's difficult to get to them.
Yeah. When
they're the highest owned guy on the slate, it's kind of just like, okay, well, I can kind of just get better secondary pieces and then just hope that Robinson, Earl, Baisley, those guys do what they're supposed to do and score 20 fantasy points.
You've already mentioned Nickeil Alexander-Walker as a guy that, you in theory could take a shot on the bench. Would you be willing to take a shot at Jackson Hayes at 3,100?
I was kind of thinking that too before I realized that Hart was out last game. I don't hate it. I mean, you're basically just hoping Joval gets in foul trouble.
Yeah. This feels like the kind of day to do it where like nothing else looks good anywhere. All you need is Joval to play 28 minutes and Jackson Hayes falls into 20 somehow, and all bets are off at 3,100 at that point.
Right. Yeah. Like if I were to give Jackson Hayes 20 minutes, he'd look like a really good value. You can't project that, but it's literally a third Joval foul with 4 minutes to go in the first half away from happening.
Yeah. I think that the way that the slate is set up right now, I think that's an interesting move to make for today. Because we just don't have those sorts of alternatives. Like I'd rather roll the dice on $3,100 Jackson Hayes getting extra minutes from a Joval injury or foul trouble than want to play a high-ish owned Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
Right. There's just the payoffs are better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because nobody's there.
Absolutely. All righty. Anything else for the Pels?
Nope.
All right. NBA Strategy Show is your promo code if you want to sign up at awesemo.com. We don't have any like crazy good deals like we had at the beginning of the year. So if you didn't get in then, you missed out on them. But NBA Strategy Show, one gigantic word. You can get an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for just $29.95. That's 25% off your first week. Or like if you just want to get an NBA package, our NBA weekly package is $16.95. Our NBA weekly express package is just $4.95. That'll give you full access to our NBA showdown and single game contests. Adam, how dare you answer Washington University in St. Louis when we both know that's the Weight Watchers logo?
Alex's alma mater and my law school first semester.
There you go. The Detroit Pistons are terrible. They are 14-point underdogs in Chicago, 220 total. Detroit's on a back-to-back. I'm assuming that everything that could be normal for the Pistons is in this particular spot. I don't have anything else to really go by right now. I do know that Killian Hayes definitely got dinged up a little bit at some point in time. I don't know if it matters. Maybe we get some bowl here. Who the hell knows? But unfortunately, there are some things that we want to get to here for the Pistons. One of them is $6,500 on FanDuel, Cade Cunningham, projected for 40% ownership. I don't have anything to add. That price is just wrong. He looks like probably the best play on FanDuel today. Sadiq Bey, by the way, $6,500 on FanDuel. He's not too far behind, but he is slightly behind. Highest owned guy on DraftKings for the Detroit Pistons, very obviously Trey Lyles, 4,900 power forward center and not the starting center for the Detroit Pistons. Looks good, has been closing. What do you want to do with Trey Lyles?
That scares me a lot. Like, I get why he's getting the ownership because he has been closing, like you said. If he's going to give you 26 minutes, he's going to look pretty good at that price. But he doesn't have to close. I mean, Isaiah Stewart hasn't been playing a lot of minutes. At some point, I would expect him to play more.
Yeah. And
that would immediately cut into Lyles. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I get it. I just kind of hate that the ownership's there. I would like this play a lot if he were getting like 8% ownership.
What about unowned Corey Joseph, who basically did the same thing as Trey Lyles?
Yeah, I think that one's kind of a little bit more interesting, but he's also 4,800, so I don't really want to get there.
And not the same
Lyles is a much better per minute guy than Joseph is the thing. So like if he gets 26 minutes, he looks good. It's just that I'm still not that confident in just giving Lyles 26 plus minutes every game.
Yeah, I gave him 24 and Stewart 24. I don't really know what to do there. I don't really know how to split the minutes between Killian Hayes and Corey Joseph either. Hayes is 1.7% owned at 3,800. I think he's probably a guy that you and I are going to mention as a play this guy in a GPP because if he's playing well, he probably will close type guy. That's another spot where like on this slate, the way that we've talked about some ownership, I'd rather do that.
Yeah. And the same for Stewart, really. I mean, he's 200. He's only a center, which sucks, but he's $200 less expensive than Lyles on DraftKings. They negatively correlate. There's no reason anyone should be that confident in this rotation. I mean, when you take a step back and think about it, why the hell would the Pistons want to be playing Trey Lyles over Isaiah Stewart? You know, from like
maybe they think Stewart's better.
That's true. I was thinking from a development standpoint, but
sure.
I don't like a month from now. I don't think that we're sitting here saying, yeah, Trey Lyles is just the closing center for the Pistons and Isaiah Stewart plays 22 minutes every game.
Agreed.
So I think that sooner than later, you're going to just start getting some sort of a mix where Stewart closes some of these games. Same can be said for Killian Hayes at 3,800. He's likely to play 22, 23 minutes and be absolute dog shit. But if he plays well, he can get 20, 28 minutes or so.
I don't have anything else to really talk about for Detroit. They have like 9 guys that I can get into lineups and none of them that actually make me feel good about it. Outside of, I'll take whatever Cade I get just because that's going to be more fun. Like, what do we do with, like, we don't go to $7,200 Diallo. I think Sadiq Bey is okay. Had a decent enough game yesterday. I don't know. Josh Jackson's 2% owned. He closed yesterday, I believe, over Hamidou Diallo. Does that continue at 3,700?
If he's playing well, sure. On average, no. I would expect him to play like 18 minutes.
I gave him 22. And I assume, like,
reasonable.
because we saw, Fuck, am I getting the right? Yeah, like Cassius Stanley played for some reason that I don't totally know. Like they have like 6 extra minutes to go around that can go to somebody. Who the hell knows? That might be Bull today for all we know.
Right.
But good luck with the Pistons. Because
I think the point here is that nobody should be very confident in who is on the floor at the end of this game. And on a slate like this, at least the way it stands right now, where value sucks and the field is just going to choose like 3 bad value guys and decide that they're jamming them in, rolling the dice on any of these guys that are getting less ownership and have volatile playing time is pretty appealing in tournaments, whether that's Hayes, whether it's Jackson, whether it's Stewart. Nobody knows what this is going to look like, but the field is going to choose a side, and just taking the opposite side is pretty appealing.
Here's the real question for you, and I think it's something that we should touch on before we go to Chicago. Because we're seeing Trey Lyles close when the game is competitive. By the way, I had no idea the Pistons came back and won yesterday. That's lunacy. But we saw Trey Lyles close this game. We saw Josh Jackson close this game. Cunningham was still out there. Bay was still out there. Like, who closes this game if they don't play well? And they go, like, this goes the way of being a 14-point underdog. Is Trey Lyles still the closing center in a bad game too? Does that revert to Isaiah Stewart? Like, what's the better scenario for Isaiah Stewart? Closing a win or closing a loss?
Shouldn't have to go back too far to find Detroit getting manhandled.
Well, they had so many guys out for a stretch. So that's where it gets weird. Like Micah Potter playing. I don't even know if he's on the fucking team.
They got destroyed by the Grizzlies a few games ago, and Luka Garza was on the floor at the end.
Okay. But not even just for Luka Garza, though. Like, can Josh Jackson close in a win and a loss? Can Killian Hayes close in a win and a loss? That's where it really gets interesting to me. Is there anybody that we think transcends both?
Hayes closed in the Memphis game. I don't think he has to. I mean, the thing is, Detroit has so many bodies. Like, if it's a true blowout, they can just throw in Garza, Stanley, Robinson, whoever they have on the end of their bench.
I don't think they have a lot of those guys right now, because they've got 4 guys on the injury report, 2 guys that are questionable. Pickett is apparently in the G League. Like, they're thinner than it seems.
Okay, so, but I mean, it can be like Lee, Stanley.
It doesn't.
Is Robinson still on the team?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, Bowl.
Maybe.
Garza.
Sure. I'm interested in Killian Hayes today, which I hate.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's at 3,800 and no ownership being the key part. I think he's a good play.
For the Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Lonzo Ball are all 20% or 30% owned on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's a little tamer. DeRozan at 15, Ball at 15, Derek Jones at 15, Vooch at 10. No real ownership going to LaVine because he's 9,400. What can we do here with the Chicago Bulls in a spot that just points us towards a blowout?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we've seen for a while with Chicago. Any of Lonzo, DeMar, Vooch, LaVine look good. They're pretty appropriately priced. I think the most favorably priced is probably Lonzo at 6,800, especially on a slate like this where you don't have a lot of value. Should give you 34 minutes or so, assuming the game's competitive. But all 4 of those guys, I think, look good.
Yeah, I don't have any like immediate priorities. I do think Lonzo looks like the best option. Kobe White scares me considerably at 5,600. It all sort of depends on how many minutes he's going to play, but if he plays 30, I have a little bit of interest in him.
Zach LaVine should not be 3% owned. I will just mention that.
Yeah, 9,400, just not pulling anything. Looks just like everybody around him. Van Vliet, Bradley Beal. I'm going to name people that aren't in his position. Siakam, Vooch, Ja Morant, DeMar DeRozan, Booker. These are all the guys around him that are all basically the same guy. So definitely like LaVine in a GPP perspective.
Also, Derek Jones for value, assuming he starts again, is no worse than any of the other value.
Yeah. Already pulling the ownership at 3,300. Feels a little bit safer if he's in the starting lineup. I have nothing else for Chicago.
Me neither.
Closing it out with the Denver Nuggets. We have no Will Barton, which is just opening up even more for Denver. Monty Morris is about 18% owned across both sites. That's whatever to me. The key talking point, 11.4 on FanDuel, 12K on DraftKings. He's 30 to 40% owned depending on the site. I have Nikola Jokic 18 points ahead of Steph Curry on DraftKings for the second highest scoring player today. He's just on a completely different level.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we kind of mentioned it before, but the ownership's there for a reason. He's just very, very clearly the top guy on the slate. The only knock on him is that it's still only one player. Like, this game can blow out. He can play poorly or relatively poorly even. And it's not like it would be different if you had, from a roster construction standpoint, I mean, it would be different if you had like Jokic on the slate, Giannis on the slate, and let's say Harden without Durant or something, where at least one of those guys, if not two or three, are going to go nuts, and you have to find a way to get them in your lineups in order to, make up for the raw points. With it only being Jokic and the value not being very good, it's just one guy that you need something to go wrong. It's still, relatively likely that happens, in which case you're in a really good situation if you didn't go there and you have a more balanced lineup that avoided the really mediocre value. But all of that being said, I mean, he projects for 60 plus points on a slate where the next closest guy is at like 50.
Yeah. If this game is competitive and it's a 1-point game, it's Jokic should have 35, 15, and 10 or something like that, plus whatever stocks you get. Aaron Gordon, I think, looks solid, around 15% owned. I think Monty Morris is probably a little over-owned. I've got a little bit of interest in Austin Rivers at 4,100 on DK. Do you like any other pieces here for Denver? I thought that they would free up some stuff with Barton out, but I don't really see it.
I mean, I like getting to some of the other guys. Just like there's no one else that stands out the same way Jokic does. But like,
yeah,
Morris at 4,700 looks decent. Campazzo at 4,600 probably plays a little bit more. I do like taking some shots at Bones Highland at 3,300, especially if he's only 8% owned.
That makes sense. By the way, don't know how many minutes he'd get if he's playing. Rodney Magruder is shooting guard small forward in the flat 3K. They did just trade for him. Who the hell knows if Rodney Magruder just steps in and plays a little bit of this Will Barton role. Interesting value option. And then we close it out with the LA Clippers. Obviously, no Paul George. We know this. No Luke Kennard, no Kawhi, Hartenstein, Preston, or Justice Winslow. We've got 20% ownership. Actually, Marcus Morris, Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, Nick Batum, Amir Coffey, and Ivica Zubac are all about 15% owned on DraftKings, slightly more on FanDuel for some of these guys. I think that Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson look the best of that bunch. What say you for the Clippers?
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing this for a while now. Jackson looks good at 5,800. Bledsoe looks fine at 5,400. Morris, 6,700 is getting expensive, but should still play 32 to 34 minutes and look pretty good. Zubats at 5,100 probably plays around 28 minutes. There's not one guy that stands out here, but I think Jackson, Zubats, Bledsoe, probably the three I get to first.
Have you seen their minutes lately?
I mean, it's all over the place.
All over the creation. It's wild.
Yeah, this team getting healthy and having more options has not been good from a fantasy standpoint.
No, not at all. Yeah, Mann and Jackson are the guys that I have my eye on for right now. Clearly casting a really wide net with this Clippers team, though. It's going to be Jokic plus a random Clipper in just about everything I've got. Anything else you want to touch on here for LA?
No, I don't think so.
All righty. Injury video later, GPP videos later, deeper dive later?
Yep. Once I get back from San Francisco, recording all of those.
There we go. Should be a real quick trip across the country. Good luck in your Learjet or whatever you've got. Good luck today, everybody. Win that money. Thank you to Yahoo for being the sponsor. We're back again tomorrow morning doing it all again on the NBA Strategy Show.